All right, let's get going. How is everyone?
Great.
Great. So yesterday I flew down to the St. George. I went to teach a class in St. George, so I flew down to St. George yesterday and then back last night, which that's a great flight. It's a great way to get to St. George. 40 minutes and you're there. So it's not cheap, but it's a great way to do it. But so it's such a nice day out there today, and I was like, I got home last night and my wife said, so how did you enjoy the 80-degree weather? And I said, oh, I didn't even notice. Because seriously, the only outside I was to walk from the office to the car, and then the car and back into the airport. And so I didn't really even get to enjoy it that much. But so give me some, what have you guys been doing since we met last on Tuesday? I told you what I've been doing. I went to St. George and back. So what wins or successes? What good things have happened?
I got my first listing under contract.
Woo-hoo! Good job. Congratulations. And it was so simple, huh?
Yeah, kinda. It was a lot. It was really for 4 days. We showed up for 4 days and it was busy. It was 10 showings in 4 days. It was kind of crazy.
Yep. Welcome to what our market is.
Yeah.
And now you can see why listings is where we want to get, right? So those listings will sell. So good job.
Thanks.
Good. Who else? What other wins or successes or good things have happened?
So we went door knocking yesterday, and
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed that. I
Yeah.
missed it only because I was on a plane.
there were only 6 people who went. So
Is that right?
Yeah,
Was George here? Did he go?
he wasn't here all day. So so Gabriel and I have gone a couple times this week. The same neighborhood. We
Nice.
finally found one where people don't want to just die, like live there and die.
You found a neighborhood where
Everywhere
they're
we
just
go,
gonna die.
it's like, no, we lived here for 50 years and we die in this house. It's
And
really
did you say, and when will that be?
Yes. You have to stop saying it because one of these days I'm going to actually say it to somebody. But we went to the same neighborhood and I have an appointment tonight.
Nice.
And then I have 3 people. 3 I think that I need to call back
From door knocks?
on,
All from door knocks?
So 3 that I'm calling back
Good job.
next week because I'm going out of town. So I try to space it where it's like, I'll talk to you after the weekend, and then that way I don't have to make an appointment until the end of the week. And anyway, one guy, it was kind of fun. It's fun when people give you objections, just in case anybody's not going to interrupt you, because like you start thinking about the things that you can say. And this one guy, which I talked about in basement history, but he said he put his house up for sale by owner in October, and they had a couple of people who came through, but then his daughter went through a crisis and moved in with him, and so he's like, I really want to sell my house, but I can't because my daughter's living here. And I was like, well, values are up so much, would you consider talking with me if we could get the price for your home that would allow you to give your daughter money to move out? Give her a down payment or
Which
help her.
actually,
And he was like, that's, after it took 10 or more minutes at the door to
Good.
just talk about it.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, we probably try to sell it ourselves. And I'm like, well, you did that and you're kind of tucked back here. And anyway, and he was like, well, we would have taken $26,000 less than we even had it listed for. And I'm like, then just pay me, that's how I feel.
Yeah,
It doesn't make
exactly.
sense. So anyway, I feel like it was one of those things where it's like, you give somebody the aha moment, like, wait, I feel really trapped in this situation, but then like you kind of give them, hey, have you thought about
Solution.
other possibilities? And so I'm calling him on Monday after
Nice.
talk to these people.
Good job. Yeah, which actually that brings up a very good point of in my opinion, a great thing while you're outdoor knocking, a great thing when you ask, now obviously if they say I'm staying here till I die, maybe this wouldn't work, but
No, I did push one lady. I almost got her. So these steers are working for you then, huh?
oh
She's
good,
like 90 years old.
good.
And I know her, and she's like, my son works on the house, and I'm like, I know her son's probably 60,
Yeah.
and I'm like, so these stairs were, oh no, my hips hurt. I'm like, okay, well, I'll check with you in 3 months.
So, but yeah, great question to ask though is, as you're talking to out knocking on doors is, at what price would you be willing to, because when they say, when you ask them, when do you plan on moving, and they say we don't, as you chit chat then, well, what price would you, be willing to do it? And because it may be that they don't realize where the market is for their neighborhood and maybe they could get more and so, anyway, just an idea, something. Good. Who else? What other good news? Good things have happened. John?
So I went out I was emailing with somebody and took them out to lunch to talk a little bit more in depth about what they're doing. And they're flipping houses right now. They've got a contact. They're buying these foreclosures and flipping them. And so my approach was, well, how are you selling these? And like, well, right now, just kind of on our own. And admittedly, he's like, I'm not really a salesperson, and so I'm not, and I don't do the work myself. I hired it out. So he said, well, so it sounds like that's more valuable to you is to have other people do the work for you. So ultimately, he wants to sign an agreement just between us that for the next year, all of his flips all list, which right now they're doing one every 45 days.
Nice.
And so he says, let's do the first one without this contract, but if it goes well, then let's just sign an agreement for the next year. So
Awesome.
that would be
That's good.
nice.
That'd be great. Good job. Congratulations. Good. Awesome. I was telling these guys I was in St. George yesterday, so I saw your uncle, right? Gavin? Is he your uncle or
Yeah,
cousin?
Yeah.
So, anyway, he didn't know you were an agent.
Well, there's not a-
But no need to because he's an agent,
Yeah.
right? So why didn't you tell him? So good. Anyway, okay, good. What other good news? Wins, successes, anything like that? All right. Well, what questions do you have? We got Paul here with Citywide. Any specific mortgage questions?
I'm here with Citywide too.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And tell me your
Steve,
name. Steve. Okay, I was gonna say I've seen you, but I don't think I've met you yet. So, any specific mortgage questions? Anything?
So I'm kind of wondering, because I think we're dealing with this a lot, where like you have somebody who's like, yeah, I might want to sell, but I'm worried that I'm not going to find anything to buy.
Yeah.
And so how do you pre-qualify somebody on that domino? Like if you don't know what they're going to sell their house for and what they can afford next, how do you get that?
Well, what I've seen recently is, you're trying to get them into a mode of, I don't know, the correct word is proactivity. You're trying to get them into the flow, and that pre-qualification is another tool or another channel that gets them into the flow of the process. And there are individuals that in fact are afraid to sell or put their house in the market because they're afraid they're going to get an offer. It's going to be a great offer, and all of a sudden they're going to be faced with making some major movement. And as been pointed out by a couple, there's the option of leasing back, the home, and that puts the buyer in a position where, I've got the home I want. We know we're going to get into it at some point in time, but there's a legitimate situation here, and we can lease this home out that we're going to possess for a season, wherever that term of that season is. But in the meantime, everybody's kind of moving in that direction, and hopefully a little bit of accommodation here, a little bit of accommodation there, allows everybody to kind of move fluidly through this process. But the pre-qualification is just another thing that allows the seller to understand what they need to be doing, and again, it keeps everything moving forward. Pre-qualifications, well, it's a 60-day typically. But again, it kind of pushes them forward to start making some decisions, start looking, and again, sometimes if they're not, sometimes they might be motivated, but until you start engaging them in pieces of this process, you won't get to where you want to be.
And do you do the pre-qual, for instance, what the equity in their home?
Mhm.
Is that just a guesstimation based on
Yeah,
what
just
you have it listed at and what they owe on?
On the pre-qual, we're gonna make a determination that this is the amount of loan that they're gonna be focused on, which is gonna put them into a certain housing category, and you do best case scenarios, maybe a lighter case scenario of, hey, you know what, you want to put this amount projected to put this amount down, projected on the amount of equity you'll have available. What are you looking to do? And that gives them a picture of, hey, we can put this amount down, which is big. We can put this amount down, which is a smaller amount. We'll be able to get this type of interest rate, and we'll have this amount of money left over to do some additional, furniture purchases or whatever they wanna do or improvements on the home. But again, it's just a component of trying to get them moving forward. That was a long explanation.
No, that's okay. I don't know if I'm the only person who.
No.
I mean, I think we're all kind of seeing.
But to kind of finish up with him, if you have a seller that's thinking about selling, and they wanna know, if I sell and I have my equity, what am I gonna qualify for? Hey, in a 20-minute, 30-minute conversation, any of us, any of the loan officers in our branch can figure out, hey, this is, you know, assuming you're credit qualified, income qualified, you know, we don't need documents, we can pigeonhole it and say, yes, this is what it would look like. This is the house that you can buy, we can do that in 20, 30 minutes.
Cool, good. Any other mortgage stuff? Okay, any other
Micron
questions?
mortgage, yeah.
Okay,
I have
oh,
this-
so first, I guess, thank you for being here, appreciate you guys.
Thanks. So we're just across the hall, but, yeah, my name's Paul Jolly.
Cool, thanks, Paul. Okay, go ahead.
I did a CMA on a mobile home.
No.
Not sure, no. Not sure how to do that. I mean, is there a difference between a mobile home versus, so this one she said is on, I asked a few questions, I talked to Rick a little bit about it. It's on a foundation,
Okay,
but it doesn't have a deed as far as, I couldn't find it on MLS.
well, that doesn't mean anything,
Okay.
just because it's not a notice.
How do I do that? Is there a difference between doing a mobile home versus a regular home?
You drive it to the nicest area.
DMV.
So the utilities come.
Clock's over there.
It
It is not in the nicest area.
The price goes way.
That's your part.
I had a buddy who grew up in this park, it's not the greenest park.
Yeah, so, but it's on a foundation.
She said it's on a foundation. It was a very interesting conversation. She's deaf, and so I was speaking to an interpreter on the phone. It was a very interesting way to go about it, but it was very similar to the Baton thing.
Yeah.
Where only one of us was talking at a time.
Yeah.
But that was, yeah, that's as much as I.
So yeah, I mean, is there gonna be a difference? So ultimately, first thing we gotta find out for sure is it on a foundation or not? Because if it is, and it's.
I have an appointment tonight. I would like to take a CMA with me, but if I can't, I can't.
So probably you're gonna have to do it two different ways then. One, doing this assuming it's not on a foundation, and one assuming that it is.
Okay.
And then just take properties that match both criteria, and then if it is, then you can use that. If it's not, it's not.
It's not just, it's not needed, it's property, and you want to live on the property. I've got one right now, that it's not needed.
It's not deeded, is that?
Yeah,
Well, but I think the hard-
states,
Yeah, but you're just saying you couldn't find it on the MLS,
I
not
couldn't
necessarily
find that
there
on
was
the
a
MLS, and I didn't find anything actually in that park that was on the MLS and historical data at all.
it's probably HOA.
And so I don't know that they own the land or anything like that. So if it's not deeded, it's still on Axles. How can I sell that for them?
Yeah,
Do
but
I earn
it's
a commission on that?
yes, yeah, but it's gonna be basically just like selling a car, where you'll go to the they'll close at the DMV basically. So,
Two cents.
but yes, you can. But here's my recommendation, and I gotta be careful because, you know, we don't want to discriminate, but don't sell, can we is it okay if we discriminate against mobile homes? No, we're not discriminating against any person, but
As long as
just
it's
be careful with the only reason I say that is, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, one of our first homes was a double wide trailer, but we put it out in a neighborhood that had curb and gutter,
Yeah.
you know, a foundation, it had an attached garage.
Mhm.
At that point, it actually was considered, if it was deeded, we owned the land.
Yeah,
And then.
Yeah, that's, to me, yeah, that's a little bit
See,
different.
this
They
one's a
actually own the
park.
land and stuff. So here's the challenge though, I've just watched a lot of times, I mean, like, you could go out and list mobile homes all day long, every
Seems like a
day.
lot of work for a little.
That's the challenge, and not just that, but how easy is it to finance? Can you know,
It's not usually.
yeah, there's very few people that will do
So it'll be
loans
hard to
on
sell.
that, so, yes,
And they're predicated on buying their other home on selling this.
yeah, it's gonna be difficult. Unless it's on a foundation. If it's on a foundation, then that changes.
Can I,
Yeah.
can I kind of, I've done a lot of mobile home.
Go
financing.
for it. Come up here though, so that
Okay.
people on TV can hear
Oh,
you.
alright.
And I'm gonna go, I realize I don't have enough copies, so while you talk, I'm gonna go get the extra copies.
Okay. So when traditional financing for a mobile home, 3.5% down, you can go with FHA, Utah Housing. the home has to be built later than 1974, like June 3rd, 1974. It has to be fixed to a foundation, and you have to own the dirt that is underneath the property. One of the other things that you need is a fixture of affidavit, or an affidavit of a fixture, which basically takes it from a mobile home to an actual real property. That was actually a problem with the last property that, it actually was real property for the last decade, but they never filed that fixture of affidavit, and we actually had to file it at closing, and we had to get a special exception from the investor. The other thing to keep in mind is anytime you're looking at a mobile home, if it's in a park and they're just paying rent, you're going to go for some crazy financing, online. They're going to pay 8-9%. It's going to be ridiculous. I think those are the type of properties that he's saying stay away from. This property that we just did, it was a $145,000 property here in Salt Lake. It was a great starter home for this young family. We were at 48% on their debt to income ratio, so we had them to the max, but it's what she could afford. Any other questions about mobile homes? Does that help?
Yeah, that's very helpful.
Key is really the property that's underneath it. I mean, that
Got to own the property.
that changes the
Has to be attached, and if it's going to go FHA, those foundations, we actually have an engineer that goes out and inspects to make sure that that foundation is attached properly. It doesn't matter how many times that home changes hands, that engineering inspection gets done. It's like $150. It's nothing crazy. But those are some things to keep in mind. So pre-1974.
I just want to say, if they're in a park, do they usually sell the lots in a mobile home park?
It just depends on the park. It could be in a park, but you own the dirt.
Right.
If you don't own the dirt, it's not an option for
Basically
traditional
just renting
financing.
a space to have it there.
But renting the space, it's a done deal with traditional financing. And it has to be a double wide too. Single wide, that's one thing I forgot. Anything else on mobile homes?
Oh, good, awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, just my experience has just been, I've watched agents get taken down, meaning taken out of the business because they tried to go out and make a living off of selling mobile homes, and it can be very difficult. So that's the only reason I say that. Nothing against anybody, but it's hard to make a living now.
I'm struggling sometimes with finding comps, and a lot of the comps are like things that are under contract already. Can I just call those agents and ask what they're under contract for?
Can you? Yes.
Will they tell me?
Probably not.
Okay. So there's no way to find out until it closes?
No way to know until it closes.
So you just
But-
have to hope that, yes, it went under contract.
Well,
You know.
but what you do know is at least at that price it generated an offer.
Okay.
Even though you may not know what it is, you at least know that that price generated an offer that they accepted. Now, it could be significantly less, but typically it's not. It's going to be within the 2 or 3% like usual. So.
And then the increase in home values, it's like 12%. Is that since the beginning of the year, or is that since like the fall, or?
I have no idea. I don't know where did
I
that come
just
from.
kind of heard that that property values are up like 12%.
According
13%. Is it 5% from the beginning of the year? Okay, that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that, so I don't know.
Well, I'm just not sure since like what the time frame was on.
Yeah, and I don't know. You'll hear differing
I read it
things
from
quite
a
often. So.
broker somewhere. So.
All right.
Thanks, Russ.
Yep, thank you. Okay, we ready to get going on this? So today what we're going to be doing is going through the buyer packet, talking about the buyer paperwork. So, as you have questions, let's talk about them. But what is going to end up happening here is we're going to spend quite a bit of time on the first, probably 3 pages, yeah. And then we won't spend a ton on all the rest. But as we go through it, here's my idea. Basically for me, what I want to have happen is basically for you to understand our buyer-broker agreement well enough that you can explain it to somebody else and that you are not afraid of getting it filled out with somebody. Make sense? So as we go through it, let's talk about questions and things. Here's one of the things that I would highly recommend that you guys should do is I really think it would be a good idea for you to sit down actually even with a highlighter or a pen in hand and read through the entire thing. We're not going to do that today. We'll save that for if we do the 12-hour new agent class. So go ahead, Angie.
And I like your thing with the line that goes over stuff again.
Yes, thank you.
That's really helpful.
Yeah. So, but I think it would be a great idea for you to sit down either with a pen in hand or a highlighter and go through and read the whole thing, make notes as to what questions you have, and then if you want to call and say, okay, here's what I didn't understand or whatever. So we're going to go through it now, and as you have questions, let's talk about it. So the first piece up here, here's where I actually like to start with this. As we go through and either talk about either the listing agreement or this buyer one, notice underneath the logo there where it says exclusive buyer broker agreement, right under that, this is crucial that you understand. This is a legally binding agreement. So read carefully before signing designated agency. Go ahead.
Do all brokerages sign one of these? I mean, that's 6 months usually like we do, or do they do it for just like a single listing, or how do they do it?
Good question. Great question.
Are the Coldwell Bankers that you worked there, and what do they do?
Good question. So yes, every brokerage is going to have either their own version of this, which is going to be very similar to what ours is, or the brokerage will use the state, or the, excuse me, not the state, the UAR has put together one. So every brokerage is going to have one. So to answer, yes, they are. Now, with that being said, though, and I'm always a little hesitant of saying this because I don't want you to think it's okay, but less than 2% of the time will an agent have their buyers sign one of these prior to writing an offer.
Wow.
So, and I hesitate saying that because what I don't want you to do is to leave here today going, oh, well, so then it's really not a big deal if I get one signed or not. But, so, and I don't know if that's part of where your question was coming from.
Well, my question is I have a client that is not happy with their realtor that they use, and she wants to sign with me, and I said, you need to show me your paperwork to make sure you're not signed with someone else.
Okay.
And she said, well, I haven't signed anything saying that I have to go with her.
Perfect. That's why I'm okay talking about it, is because that is the norm. So yeah, in fact, actually, as we get into this, let's stop and talk about that for a minute, because in terms of our agency, or excuse me, our code of ethics at the board, when you went through the new agent orientation over there or whatever, they like hammer on you. You've got to ask if they are working with an agent, right? They're still saying that? Okay. You haven't been yet, or you don't remember?
Haven't been yet.
Oh, you need to go.
Oh, I know. I was informed.
Okay, so anyway, so that's one of the things that they're totally hammering you guys on. But let's stop and think about that for a minute. Now, our code of ethics does clearly state part of our code of ethics is you won't interfere with somebody else's agency. But that's why it is important, I think, for you to understand. Most agents, which is also the reason it's important that you do this, but most agents, like really, less than 2% of the time will an agent actually really get this signed prior to writing an offer. Most agents are not receiving the type of training you guys are getting and having the company standpoint of the belief of you should really go through and get this signed.
It's on this topic of the ethics side of it. I have a neighbor who's using a discount broker right across the street from us. I missed this deal. They're using a for sale by owner. Everyone calls in. They've undervalued their properties by a lot.
Okay.
But they have agency. I can't go over there and tell them you did this wrong.
No. Yeah, so
Because it's going to affect my property and my value of my home
well,
if I sell it and soon.
one of your other neighbors could go and tell them.
Right.
But you can't.
I can make that happen.
All of them do that.
So-
Because they really undervalued it, probably $15,000 to $20,000.
Well, but what should happen then is they should get multiple offers and bid the price up.
And they haven't sold it. It's been on the market for a while.
Then
But there's other places in there that are for less square footage than they're selling.
Huh.
And there's nothing wrong with that property as far as I know. So it's some screw.
Interesting. Okay, Timber?
So if you're gonna be referring, do you have somebody sign this and then you do the referral later? Like,
for instance, if
So
I
an
have-
outgoing referral is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, like, cause I have somebody who's potentially gonna buy in Cottonwood Heights, but they may go to Summit County, and so I'm gonna end up referring that likely.
Well, so if they're gonna maybe buy here, then yes, I would have, if
And then
all
if-
they were
if
doing
they
is going
decide-
somewhere else, then no, I wouldn't have to say.
Okay. But what do I do with regards to going back and forth county, like with Summit County?
What do you mean, what do you do?
Like, do I need to refer that out?
You can do Summit County if you want. So it's up to you. So I probably have to sign
I
it.
think what she's asking is there a referral contract she can write up?
Yeah, I mean, do I, if they decide.
Oh, with the buyer?
But you don't wanna drive that.
No, it's not about that at all. I can talk about it.
So on this though, so let me make sure to finish up that point. So as you're prospecting, now, so here's what our code of ethics says. In fact, I'm wishing I would have actually brought in the code of ethics, but basically I'll sum it up for you. What it says is you cannot interfere with somebody else's agency agreement. Now, it goes on then to explain what that means. Basically, so when you are taught that you need to ask for if they've got an agent already, what the code of ethics actually says is that, well, when do we need to do it? When do we need to ask that? That's the question for you guys. When do we need to ask if they've signed agency?
Isn't it in the first time that you're interacting about real estate?
See, that's what's interesting is that that's typically how they'll tell you is when you first meet the person you need to. Now, from the division's point of view, this is not code of ethics, but from the division's point of view, where that comes from is when you first meet somebody, you need to disclose to them who you represent when you first meet them. So that's a little different than asking them if they have agency. So there's really, as far as the state's concerned, they just want you disclosing who you represent. So if you're sitting, let's say, at an open house and a buyer walks in, they're saying you need to let them know you're right there representing the seller. Okay? That's not the same as saying, hey Gabriel, are you working with an agent or have you signed agency or anything like that? That's not the same thing. So, but our code of ethics says you need to ask prior to signing agency, no, sorry, I'm saying that wrong. Back up, scratch it. Prior to providing a CMA or writing an offer. So, let's all agree right now, we'll never ask until you're prior to writing an offer or presenting a CMA. Why do you say wow?
That's very different than what I've been doing. And I've missed out on some deals.
That's why I want you to wait to do it, is because you will miss it. Because here's the problem. Let me show you why. Let me show you what happens. Let's put this aside for a second. Let me show you what happens. So since I brought up open house, let's say I'm sitting in an open house. Here's the challenge. People will lie to you either way. I mean, it's true. So and let me show you what I mean by that. So let's say I'm sitting in an open house. So in fact, I'm going to be doing an open house. Pete is and Dan. Okay. So Gabriel's our buyer. Gabriel walks in and I say, "Are you working with an agent?" And he says no. Then what does the agent typically do? As soon as he says no, he's not working with an agent.
Get happy.
I what? Get happy, and then what? What do you do?
Can I help you? What are you looking for?
Yeah, we start trying to get an appointment out of him, right? So we're asking him for an appointment, we're trying to get an appointment, and he doesn't really want one, he doesn't want one, so he finally gets away from me without an appointment. But I've said, here, take my card, if I can help, let me know. He takes my card. Now he walks into Pete's open house. Gets to Pete's open house, and Pete says, "Are you working with an agent?" What are you going to say?
No.
Okay, so he might say no again, or he might say, well, kind of. And when he says kind of, who's he thinking about? He just barely left my open house. So, because, see, think about it this way. By saying no, I attacked him. So he's like, I don't want to have that experience again. Now, he may not consciously be thinking that, but unconsciously, I don't want to have that experience again. So he walks into Pete's. Are you working with an agent? Well, I mean, I do have a guy that I've been, talking to 5 minutes ago that I just have his card, right? But when Pete hears that, then if they go, well, I got a guy that I'm talking to, but I mean, that's kind of it. What are you going to do?
Calm down. Not pushing what you did.
Have you signed it?
I think the agent's still going to try to go get an appointment. So you're going to keep bugging him and bugging him and bugging him. So now he leaves and walks into Dan's. Are you working with an agent? What's he going to say? Yep. And then when Dan goes, oh, okay, Well, go ahead and take a look around. If there's anything I can help you with, let me know. They go, oh, that works really good. So then from then on, every time they talk to you, they're going to, oh, yes, I've got an agent. See, now the flip side of that I've had happen to me, they call on the phone. You say, they're like, let's say they're calling on my listing, sign call. So I get the phone call. It's Gabriel. I say, are you working with an agent? And let's say that he is working with an agent, but his agent's busy or out of town or, yeah, where are you going, Timbra?
Colorado.
Yeah, he's in Colorado this weekend. So, and he says to me, I'd like to see the house. Well, do you have an agent? Yes. Well, you need to actually have your agent show it to you then. So, okay, and I hang up. So then he calls Pete. Hey, I'd like to come see your listing. Do you have an agent? Yeah. Well, you need to have your agent go show you. Now he calls Dan. Hey, I'd like to come see your listing. Dan says, do you have an agent? What's he going to say?
No.
He's going to say nope, because he wants to see the house, right? And can you show me a couple others while we're out there? And now he goes out and shows those houses. See, here's the problem. They lie to you either way. Whatever is in their best interest, they'll tell you yes, they have an agent, or they'll tell you no, they don't. So forget asking that. If they really have an agent, so let's say that Gabriel walks in, I'm chit-chatting with him, we're talking, and if he has an agent and I say, what we ought to do is sit down so I can hear what it is you're looking for in a home and walk you through the buying process, when would be a good time to do that? If he's got an agent for real, what's he going to say?
I already have that.
See, and I'm still actually even way exceeding what our Code of Ethics says. Code of Ethics says I only have to ask prior to writing an offer or presenting a CMA. I'm not even that far. I was just asking for an appointment.
So can you take them on showings or any of that stuff before? So those are the only two times you have to ask.
So how it says in the Code of Ethics, it says that you have to ask, providing, the wording actually is before providing a substantive service.
Okay.
And then in parentheses, it defines a substantive service as being presenting a CMA or writing an offer. So, I mean, to me, that covers both the buyer and the seller. So yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Cool. Now, with that being said, though, I want you to still.
That would be a waste of time if you took them on a show.
Yeah. Well, maybe.
I'm glad we're talking about this because I had this exact conversation last night with somebody that called from a listing that I've got, and then the day before, same type of thing. Both are working with another agent, but they're both unhappy with the agent they've got because one doesn't understand what they're looking for, the other one is out of town all the time, and so they're missing out on properties. And so in our conversations, it's kind of that same thing. I'm asking you, you're working with an agent, you've got a signed agreement and everything. They've been looking at some houses, but they want to get out of it. And I said, well, that's not my job to help you get out of that. You need to look at the paperwork, see what the dates are. What's the best thing for me to do, for them to just kind of wait until it runs out so we can work together? Or see if they'll let you out of the
So I guess
agency.
here's the first question is, do they have signed agency?
One does for sure, the other I'm not sure.
If they do have signed agency, here's the thing. This is actually a little bit of a complicated thing, but here the other piece to the falls into this, and I think this is a very good conversation to be having, but is there's two pieces of this. One is, and it's tied to what we're talking about right here, this is a legally binding agreement. So this is a legally binding agreement, right? The other piece of that is who gets paid. Let's say that the client has signed this, but you go and find them a house because they're unhappy with their agent, and let's just make it simple. They call on your listing, they say that we want to come and see it, you go show it to them. While you're there, they tell you, we've signed agency, but we don't like the agent because of blah, 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 whatever, and they say, we want to write an offer, and we want you to write it on this house. What do you do?
In that scenario, I would
I
say,
see some
well,
shaking heads no and some
because you have signed agency, your agent has to write the offer. I can't take the offer.
So for me, it depends on what they're unhappy with their agent for. So hang on, let me finish. Then I'll let you guys. So, because to me, if they were unhappy because my agent's not showing me homes that are meeting my needs, or they're not returning my calls, those type of things, I'd write the offer.
Really?
I would write the offer.
This is performance.
And expect to get both sides of the
And I would expect that I'm going to get both sides of the commission. Now, here's why. So here's the difference. So, and this actually is very applicable to what we're talking about with this. So, now, I would do it knowing there's a chance I may not get the commission, but I still would, in that scenario, would think I have a pretty good chance of still getting paid. Because these are two separate issues, okay? Because the procuring cause is going to be in terms of the board. So if I write the offer, we get it, it closes, whatever, the agent then, the other agent that has agency signed, says, okay, I think I'm entitled to commission. So you can file an arbitration with the board. The board then will send it to the grievance committee. They will read through. So in fact, let's set it up. So Andy's the agent who's signed. Dallin writes the offer, okay? So Andy says, I think I'm entitled to the commission. So you're going to write something up, send it into the board. The board's going to then look at it, the grievance committee, which is a number of people sitting at a table reading through it. And they have to decide pretty much, is this a valid thing or not? And actually just this year, they actually have even, NAR has changed it to make it even more so, to where more of these go through. It used to be like when I was on the grievance committee, we would sit there and read through some of them and be like, this is dumb, this is not even a question, let's just toss it out. And we could, that grievance committee could just say, no, we don't think Andy's got a leg to stand on. But how it is today, if there's even a fraction of a chance, they'll send it through. So they will say, okay, let's send it through. Then at that point, it will go to a hearing. So the grievance committee is only hearing your side of the story. They have to make that decision, which is, again, hearing only his side of the story, you're probably going to go, oh, yeah, I think he's entitled, so you'll pass it on. Then it goes to the professional standards where you'll have a hearing. Now, prior to the hearing, though, now Dallin gets to give his response of, well, here's what happened. Here's why I think I'm entitled to the commission. Then that professional standards committee is going to sit down with both of you and get a hearing. And you can bring witnesses, you can have the client write a letter, you can do whatever. But you would get to show up and say, here's why I think I'm entitled to the commission. Dallin would say why he did. But now, there is never it's not like we can say if this happens, he's going to get it. If that happened, you're going to. Because we have a procuring cause, we have to take every single piece of the puzzle and try to put it together. And then at that point, that group of people, which is usually 5 agents that are, and I'm on that right now, the professional standard. I mean, there's tons of people on it, but every hearing just has only 5. And Dave Baird's on it as well. So we will sit there and hear your side. We'll hear your side. We can ask questions. But here's what I'll tell you. For me personally, at least I can say, sitting on those professional standards, if the person he wrote the offer wrote a letter saying, here's why we didn't use Andy, and detailed out why, and if it made sense, I mean, if they were saying they aren't calling us back and da-da-da-da-da, but if you could show up and say, no, here's my text messages showing that I was staying in touch with them, that might have a little bit different. But some of the big pieces that handle of it on procuring cause is an uninterrupted chain of events that leads to a successful closing. So which means there's a lot of weight that gets put on who actually got the deal closed. A ton of weight put on that. So I'll quickly tell you one that we did, which I think this was last year, first part of last year, had one that was very similar to what we're talking about. The agent had signed agency with them, left to go out of town, had her broker take care of my clients while I'm gone, said yes, she would. The broker had stayed in touch with them, but the buyer went to get their hair cut. While they were getting their hair cut, the person cutting their hair, they got talking about this buyer slash haircutee, I guess, right? The person getting their haircut, about how they were looking to buy a house and da-da-da, and the person cutting the hair said, well, you know, so-and-so, her husband and her brother are trying to help their mom get her house sold because she's passed away now, and so you ought to go look at it. And she said, well, I actually saw that house. I didn't realize it was your family members. I saw it, and my agent called, but it was out of our price range, and so we just didn't ever look at it. And she said, oh, well, I'll bet they would give you a deal on it because of, you know, how we've known you. And so she said, oh, well, if you guys could get it in the price range that would work, that would be great. So they said, okay, well, let me call and talk to the brother who's really in charge, and then we'll let you know. Calls the brother. Brother calls then the listing agent, says, hey, we've got somebody who wants to see the house. Great, let's go show it. Goes over, shows the property. Prior to writing an offer, this agent says, have you signed agency with anybody? They say, no, we haven't. So she writes the offer, the deal closes, then that other agent, now it gets very complicated, this whole story. The broker was actually the mom of the agent, and the loan officer was the dad of the agent. So the only reason this agent really found out, or how she found out about it, was they went back to the loan officer saying, hey, we found this house, which none of that was ever disclosed either, that there was a relationship there. But so the loan officer then went to the daughter and said, hey, FYI, your buyer's wrote an offer with somebody else. So she let the deal close, then filed for arbitration. We looked at it. We gave, so using the scenario, Dallin's the listing agent, you were the gal that's left on vacation, we gave the commission to Dallin. And we did it because there was an uninterrupted chain of events. And the agent said, well, yeah, but the only reason that I didn't show the house was because it wasn't in their price range. Which actually, to her, she felt like that was a good excuse for her to not show the house. But for us, what it did is said, that just told us this agent was a better negotiator, basically, and
So what
was able to put the deal
So
together.
it sounds like signing this kind of was almost frivolous.
Almost,
To an extent.
except for that, which is why I bring this up. This is a legally binding agreement. So what happens though is that agent, or Andy in this scenario, could actually go back and sue the buyer saying, I'm owed a commission because it says right here in section 2 that if you buy a property, I'm entitled to a commission. So it does subject the buyer to potentially having to now pay a commission to you. Now, very rare that that goes through, but it could.
Just for my own knowledge,
Sure.
is there ever a case where you would split the commission?
No, yeah, great question. It does not get split. So prior to the arbitration, so prior to sitting down in that scenario, they could work it out and split it. But if they don't, once it gets to that professional standards, it's all or nothing. We don't ever split. It's the way that the NIR's got it set up is he gets it or he gets it. There's no in between. So yeah, great question. Thank you for asking. So here's the point. Back to that, which I'm glad you asked because this was a great question. So this is a legally binding agreement, meaning they're going to be entitled to owing you a commission if they buy a property. What it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get paid on any house they buy, though. Okay, so that's where this kind of gets kind of screwy on this whole thing. But so for me, that again, I mean, I want to honor if I know somebody's got agency. So if you know for sure, back to Dallin's, if you got one that does have agency. Now, here's the other thing that actually plays into this too on our code of ethics is it depends on who contacted who. See, even if somebody has agency and they contact you, so if they've signed agency but they call you saying, Dallin, we want help, we need your help, then our code of ethics allows you to go help them if they're saying they need help. So it is kind of a sticky thing, but so where you want to be careful though, why we want to be saying to them, look, I can't interfere with your agency, so ultimately until that's taken care of, we really should put it on hold. Now, what you can't tell them is here's how you could go get out of it. What you want to tell them instead is you have rights as a consumer, so you can either go talk to the Division of Real Estate to find out what your options are, talk to the Board of Realtors, and talk to the broker. But those are really the only things you can tell them is, I can help you. We could actually even sign this effective whenever that other one expires. We don't have to wait. We could sign it to be effective then. But unless they're willing to let you out of it for some reason, which you'd have to talk to them about, I can't do anything with you until then.
So if you're effective right after, I know there's a clause in there about the 60 days after that you, if I've shown them a home and Dallin goes and shows them the same home, how
So
does
let's
that?
hold that till we
Okay.
get to there. So yeah, great question.
So essentially, all I told them last night, said, I think it's for like 2 months, and it's been like a month and a half, and I've been frustrated and whatever.
So why were they frustrated?
Because they're not seeing any homes that they're even interested in, the agent's showing them, and the agent's out of town right now, and there's these homes that he's trying to see that he can't see. So that's why he looked at my listing, and it was interesting because he called, and on my listing on KSL that I moved over, I put that it's currently under contract. He says, so what does that mean? So I explained to him what active meant, what under contract meant, what sold meant, how the process works. I explained how agency works, and educated him on all this stuff that he had no idea about. And I said, what I would do is ask the agent, and to not throw up some red flag, I just said, I think it would be good, have copies of everything that you're signing. If you don't have a copy of that, ask the agent for a copy and just say, I need all the paperwork for my records. Can I get a copy of that agreement? And then see when it ends. And if it's coming up, then let it end, and then I can find you a house as soon as it's end.
So good. So that is one option. Here's the other thing though, is if they have been, the term is abandoned.
Yeah.
If they've been abandoned, then go for it. So it's just the question is that if
Yeah.
they feel
Are
like
they
they've been
abandoned?
abandoned,
Yeah.
then if the agent left and didn't tell them, hey, I'm gonna be gone and here's who's covering for me, if they're splitting
Really?
the C properties, I mean, it is a little, I guess to me, here's what I would say is I almost would feel like go for it
Mhm.
and just recognizing there's a chance I could
There's a
not
chance
get
you don't
paid
get
the
it.
commission.
Yeah.
But if they would say here's why we switched from that agent to Dellen, there's a pretty good chance you're gonna get the commission. Now, what they need to know though is if they have signed agency, they run the risk, and it's up to them to make the decision, that the other broker could come back on them saying you owe us.
Yeah.
the money.
Inform
So-
the civils.
Even though, what? Yeah, it's civils, yeah, exactly, taking them to small claims court.
But the board isn't necessarily.
No, very uncommon, I would say, but
Okay, so you're saying that
Yes.
this needs to be signed before you write an offer, or when you say present a CMA, because I'm on the listing side, so sometimes
Well-
so on the buying side, you're saying like if they're considering a property and you pull up comps to talk with them about like what they should offer before they're even gonna write. I mean, what are you saying, like what?
what I'm saying is, a great question. The code of ethics just says you need to ask the question. So I'm not saying that's when you sign this.
Okay.
We'll get into that in a minute. What I'm saying is when our code of ethics says you have to ask Gabriel if he has signed agency is prior to writing an offer or presenting a CMA. Prior to that, you don't have to ask. Okay? Does that make sense?
And so you don't, like, do you, or you don't?
I do not.
There's
I
so
don't
much
ask.
information.
I don't ask. Is that what you're meaning? Do I
Yeah.
ask? I don't ask.
So, I mean, as far as presenting the CMA, you're saying that would be like when somebody is looking to make an offer that's trying to figure out.
Or to a seller.
Military.
Let's say that
Okay.
you're door knocking and somebody says, I want a CMA in my house. Prior to presenting the CMA, you should ask them if you signed agency with anybody. Which,
Oh,
it's
I
a little
see.
more obvious with the seller because there should be a sign out front,
Okay,
right?
I know,
Yeah,
because I thought you were saying you have to ask them to sign this before.
No, you have to
You
ask
said,
if they
if
have
they are
signed.
signed this. Okay,
Yeah, and then we'll
that's-
get
that's
into
why I
here in
was-
just a minute.
That's why
more
I'm
about
so confused.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you clarified. So,
So when you get to that point of writing the offer, you ask them if they have agency, you're not gonna apply what you've already said to this, but, so you're saying you just go ahead and write the offer and see how it goes.
when in his scenario, I'm saying
No, you just said that you don't ask until you get to the point of writing an offer, which
Oh.
is 10 minutes about it.
Okay, yeah, good question. Actually, so that's not that's not necessarily right either. So I may ask sooner than that. When I will ask, actually, that's in section 4. So as soon as we get to section 4, I'll deal with it. So yours is 3, yours is 4.
I was just gonna say, I'm sure it's different case by case, that's why it's a
Exactly.
hard
Exactly.
question to answer, but, I mean, it's kind of per agent. The sooner you ask, the better you know how you're going to move forward with the transaction, because if I'm protective over my time, and based on that scenario, if I've done a ton of work and I get to that point that, oh, I've got signed agency, this could really complicate things, and this is a $100,000 property, this is not worth it. Versus another scenario, like this woman who has been working with an agent who doesn't understand anything, that wants them to live in Draper, but they want to live in Harvard Yale, their budget's $800,000. That's worth me taking a risk on because
Yeah,
that's
that's
a pretty easy commission.
Well, especially when you add that to it. If
So-
you've got the other agent now out there telling them you don't want to be there, you want to be over
They
here.
don't understand what they want, and so that's why they're calling me, because I grew up in that area. So we
So
need
to me,
someone an
yes,
expert.
that's a scenario that I would say. But they do need to recognize. The biggest thing is they need to
Right.
understand though. If they're feeling abandoned, the agent isn't meeting their needs. You can go do it, and you'll probably get paid. They do need to understand
Does
there's a
that
chance.
apply here though? So if they feel abandoned and it goes legal? Because a $100,000 commission and I have signed agency, I'm more likely to go legal with someone versus $100,000, So does that apply legally? They feel abandoned, so that contract's now null and void?
Probably not. I mean, I don't know. It depends, but it could. I mean, it could.
That's what I'm curious,
That's just
'cause,
it. It could if somebody looked at it and said, if they were showing up saying he wasn't calling me back, They were, we told them we didn't want to look at houses there, they were taking us there. I mean, that could play into it for a judge to go, well, then I don't think you're owed a commission. You didn't honor your fiduciary duties. Ultimately, that's what they would have to show is that their fiduciary duties, they were doing that. But if because remember, one of the fiduciary duties is being obedient, and if the client was saying, I don't want to look at houses here, they still should, for the sake of, making sure they're not redlining or anything, say, well, maybe you should consider it, but beyond, if they're saying, no, we don't want to, okay, then you go with what they're saying. No, go ahead.
Is your license at risk at all if you have somebody sign a buyer broker agreement and they're already signed with somebody and they're just not happy?
I don't think your license isn't going to be, I don't think, at risk for something like that, especially if they're unhappy with what's going on. But I mean, it's a fine line I got to walk on this, and because at the same meaning, like, we don't want to go out and like intentionally try to hurt people and things. But at the same time, if you got a client in a scenario saying, yeah, I've signed this, but they won't call me back. I tell them I want to see houses here, and they show me over here, or I tell them this is my price range, and they're showing me higher price. I can't get them to do, you could say, well, have you tried talking to the broker to see if they can help with that, and things like that, so.
Can you ask if they're happy? Or you have to let them?
No, don't ask, if you start asking, well, are you happy with how the agents, I think you're going to be putting yourself into trouble with that.
Hot water with whom?
Your car code of ethics.
So you're gonna get paid back.
Yeah. No, because code of ethics is the board. The board can't take your license. They can fine you, but they can't take your license. The division can take your license. So the division is more in terms of those things.
Give you information
Yes.
and then talk about it.
Correct.
But don't fish, right?
Go ahead.
Well, when we went to the code of ethics, or the orientation class, the guy was talking there, and he said he had a situation like this, and I don't know how long ago it was, but he was saying that basically somebody felt abandoned by their agent, but they wanted to put an offer on a home, and so what he did is he just wrote the offer, he paid the commission, like he let the commission go to the original agent, and then he went later and wrote up the agent, because it was like and so then you can do that if you don't want to wonder if you're going to end up in hot water. You can always go the other way where you just wait, and then you write up the agent later, and then they can deal with that.
And then you go to the grievance board after the fact?
Yeah, because he basically
Has to be
said,
within the key on the grievance is if you're filing something, it has to be within 180 days.
he just said
Is that pretty, that
he
sounds
just,
safer.
I think maybe because then you don't end up being like the agent that people were like, that guy's always screwing people out of there. He was like, I just.
Yeah, and I'm not saying to screw people out of their stuff.
No, I know, but I mean, I think that.
Here's ultimately why, I guess, let me sum it up with this, and then we'll get going here on this. But let me sum it up with this. I have just seen so many times where, what Andy already said, you are gonna, if you're asking the question right out of the gate of, Dan, have you signed agency with somebody, or do you have an agent? You're gonna miss out on deals. You're gonna miss out on more deals that way than getting a connection. I mean, because here's the other thing. Depending on how if it's like I like using the example of an open house, because if he walks into the open house, he came to me. It's not me going after him. If somebody comes to you and asks for help, you can help them. So if he comes to me and starts telling me how frustrated he is and those type of things, that's where I guess I'm saying is, we want to be careful, and just best thing is get involved with one of the brokers and we'll deal with it on a case by case, because there's no exact way of saying yes this or no that, or unless, I've just had scenarios though, like I'll give you a quick example of one that an agent came and said, hey, I got this person who has signed agency, but the guy is only showing them fourplexes. That's all he's showing them. And so they now want a single family home, and they don't want him to do it. So they're okay if they buy a fourplex of him doing it, but with us. And I said, okay, well, so tell me more about this. Well, they hadn't talked to the guy in 2 months. See, and in that scenario for me, if the agent hasn't followed up in 2 months, I said, go for it, go deal with it. If they end up buying a single family home, and the agent comes back, realize you might not get paid on it, but go for it. Go do the deal.
And knowing 2%, like you said, that's not very many agents.
Yeah, so she went and did the deal, and the other agent never even ever called the people again. They just they had abandoned them. So we kind of have to play it a little bit by ear on it, okay? You don't agree with me?
No, I think that's crazy.
Oh, that agents don't- Yeah.
Maybe they're just crazy.
They don't have
Well,
money.
so, okay, so let's get into, so here's,
I wonder if a couple communicated they wanted a single family house, or if they even told them that.
they may not have, yeah, who knows? Yeah, but, which is a great segue, thank you for that. Because here's, for me, when should you do this then? Here for me is when I think you should do this. You may end up using showing a couple properties as a way of getting an appointment to sit down and talk to somebody. So what I don't want you to hear, because I've had agents do this, like somebody calls them on the phone and they say, we want to go see these houses, and on the phone they're saying, okay, but when we get to the house, I'm going to have you sign agency before I even go in the house. I mean, I don't want you doing that. I mean, you could, I guess, if you wanted to, but you're going to scare a lot of people away doing it that way. So for me, if somebody called, like, so using Dallin's example of his listing, somebody calls me, first question out of my mouth when they say, hey, I'm calling about the property on
743s.
743s, whatever, okay? So they say, I'm calling on the property in 743s. Great, when would be a good time I could show it to you? If they said, how about this afternoon at 3 o'clock? Great, I'll meet you out there at 3 o'clock. I'm going. Because I'm gonna have a much better chance of getting them as a client by doing that, okay?
Well, and for me, it's like, if they're doing that, what kind of agent do they have that they feel like they have to go and be proactive finding a property when that's what they're hiring their
And
agents to
here's the other side of that too. Even if they do have an agent and we get to the house, because that's the other question I get is, well, what happens if I drive out to the house and then they have their agent with them? I've had it happen. But again, you'll do more, that'll happen less than you will missing out on number of deals. Does that make sense? So for me, great, I'm gonna set the appointment and I'll go out and show it. Because here's the other thing, especially if it's my listing, I've got a fiduciary duty to my seller. So even if I go out and show it and they say, great, I'll have my agent call you, okay. You know what, at least I did a service for myself, okay? So that's how I look at it. So for me though, more times than not, you're gonna get out there and you'll be able to build a relationship with them and get a client, then you'll miss out on by saying, are you working with an agent? So I would go out and show the property. From there then, ultimately what I want to do is use that as a way to get an appointment to have them come in and do the needs analysis class that we talk about, where I can sit down with them and say, describe for me your ideal home. See, for me, the time I want to get this signed is at the end of needs analysis. That is when I would ask for this. As soon as I have sat down with them and said, describe for me your ideal home, tell me what else, tell me more, keep going, all of that, after you've done that, because you'll have built the rapport with them then, that this is easy to say, great, I understand what you're looking for in a home, I'll go out and find it, here's how I work though. Look, I'm gonna go out and look at all these properties on the market that are in your price range, but I'm gonna only show you the ones that meet your needs. So if I'm gonna do that, I just want to know that during the time we're working together, you'll commit to working exclusively with me. And they'll say, oh yeah, for sure. Great, I've just got an agreement here that states that in writing, then I go through this with them. Make sense? That's when I would do this. I wouldn't, when I get out and look at the houses, I wouldn't go, okay, I need you to sign this. Because they're going to be like, whoa.
No.
But if you build the relationship and say, when can we sit down at the office and I can hear more, that's when I want to do it. Make sense? Okay, all right, let's keep going here. So, whew.
Open a can of worms.
I know, geez, an hour later, we're now on the first blank line. All right, so what do we put in on the date?
Oh my God.
The rest will go pretty quick. All right, so what are we going to put in on the date there? Effective when? Yeah, whenever it's going to be effective. So in Dallin's scenario, let's say that they say, hey, it's another 30 days or 2 weeks. You can date this for 2 weeks out, okay? So we're going to put that in there, and then the buyer's name. Now, in terms of buyer's name, it isn't important as much on this form as it is on the rep sheet, but I kind of just like to train you to do it the same all the time. Ideal would be if they've already applied for a loan, the name you want to put on here is how they applied for the loan. Especially because if you're doing this through .loop, which actually brings up a whole other thing, but if you're doing this through .loop, it's going to just match everywhere, so you're just going to put it in once. So make sure that the name you put in there is how they applied for the loan. So for instance, with me, I mean, you guys all call me Russ, which is what I tell you to, but my name really is Russell. And if I went to apply for the loan, it's going to be Russell. So in .loop or on here, I would want to put Russell Orchard. Does that make sense? Instead of Russ.
If we're dealing with a husband and a wife, let's say, and the husband is the only one on the loan, what I've heard is that you can put the husband is the only one signing all the contracts, and then you can add her to the deed after,
Correct.
at closing, right? So we only need to worry about the husband in that instance and all the paperwork. Is that
Correct.
accurate?
Yes, if he's gonna be the only one purchasing, which actually, as you said that, typically, you could just add the wife afterwards, although depending on the type of loan, it's always a good idea to check with the loan officer, because I have seen scenarios that like I think it's a Utah housing, that where a husband has then deeded his wife onto the title, that when they found out, when Utah Housing found out, they went back and said, no, you gotta take her off, she can't be on there at all. So you want to always just verify. Very rare, and I've only heard that happen one time, but it's always a good idea.
And also make sure, like in my case, when we bought our home in Australia, I wasn't a citizen. I was on just I wasn't a citizen basically, and I didn't have, I wasn't a citizen. So I couldn't be on the loan that we took for our home because it would have taken like 3 months for them to do my international credit check. So if you notice an accent or something like that, just make sure, so you don't lose the sale.
Yeah, just always get them with the lender. It's I would say we want to be careful of saying if you notice an accent. We want to treat everybody the same.
I'm saying, but then again, the lender can do that. That's okay.
Good. All right. So next, section 1, terms of the agreement. So this is where that first blank line, you're going to put your name in as the buyer's agent, right? As the authorized agent for the company and starting on the effective date listed above and ending at 5 p.m. on, what do we want to put in there?
6 months from
A year.
A year, 6 months? What do you think, Bill? I think you have a different opinion. No?
I think it varies, and I don't think someone's alluded to it earlier, but I had a client that was unhappy with the last agent, they only wanted to sign 9 days.
Yeah. So here's what I do. When I get to this section on that, I like to ask them, how long do you think you're going to need? This for me is a great, great question of how long do you think you're going to need. They're going to tell you in terms of motivation. If they say, I don't know, so just sometime in the next year, what are they telling you? Not very much. But yet if they say, oh, we probably only need a couple months, I don't know, how long does it take? Great. So for me, I usually, there's differing thinking on this. So anybody that teaches a class, you're probably going to get a different answer. On our listing agreement, yes, 6 months is our company policy. On the buyer side though, for me, I usually do 2, 3, 4 months, something like that. So, but I base that on how long do you think you're going to need. If they say a couple months, then I probably would do it for 3. Go ahead.
Now this agency agreement needs to be in place until settlement, right?
Correct.
No.
Yeah.
It'll automatically extend.
Yes,
Yeah.
I was going to
So
say
once-
yes.
Once you're under contract, it extends, or
It's on the second page.
Yeah, it says that if we put a property under contract that hasn't closed, then this automatically extends to the closing date.
perfect. Okay, awesome.
Our listing agreement is the same way.
Okay, great.
Yeah, which is important to understand on that. So good. So as far as how long, can you do 6 months? Yes. Could you do a year? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just, for me, would prefer to keep it a little bit tighter than that, only because you've got fiduciary duties then. If they want to go out and see houses and they're out writing offers on houses, you got to keep going and showing them houses. So for me, I'd rather err on the side of 3 or 4 months than 6, unless they're telling me, unless I know when they're signing it, it's going to be 6 months.
And you can drop a buyer if you like that.
Well, yeah, so what he's saying, you could drop a buyer if you want. Well, this is a legally binding agreement, and the only way really out of this is both of you have to agree going in, you both have to agree going out. Now, there is a caveat to that though, if we do have the right to reassign it to somebody else. So the company could reassign it, but once this is signed, the only way out of it is both of you agreeing to get out.
But you don't need the buyer to sign if you're reassigning,
No, because I think in here,
because it's with the broker.
we've got the agreement, because it belongs to the brokerage.
Yeah, because you're the agent.
Okay, good. All right, let's keep going. So the next blank line down there is what it says is that you're going to act as their agent in locating or negotiating for the acquisition of a property in, and then you've got an A or a B. In A, you're putting in there the county that we're looking in. So you could put Salt Lake / Davis or whatever. If you've got multiples, I've heard some people have put in there all Utah counties, but whatever. But so A would be if specific counties. So using Timbers, if you only wanted to do Salt Lake County and somebody else Summit, you could just say in Salt Lake County. And if they buy in Summit, this doesn't apply. Or B says a located at. So if the person says, which I would not get in the habit of this, but let's say that somebody is hesitant, like so on, was it Bill or yours? One of you was saying you had somebody that was hesitant because the agent wasn't taking care of them. It may be that, or let's say a scenario that they're just saying, hey, if I buy this house, I'll let you be my agent. Great. So that blank line would be for a specific property.
And if there's no specific property, you just put,
I put NA on here. Yep.
okay.
You just put all of you, Carl. That's fine.
That works fine.
That's what Richard's doing.
Can you put,
Okay.
can you put both, like, you know, we're gonna go put an offer in on this property, and if it doesn't go through, whatever, we still got agency because we put Salt Lake County as well?
I probably, but to be safe, I think I would just say Salt
Just
Lake
say
County
not-
and not do the other. Because Salt Lake County covers you. Putting both, again, somebody could come back later saying, oh, I thought it was only for that property in Salt Lake County. So I just don't want somebody to have an excuse.
What's the downside of putting all of Utah?
Nothing.
Well,
Well, I guess the only downside to doing that would be if they wanted to go see his property in St. George, you gotta go show them. Yeah, you could. So it's fine. All right, two, brokerage fee. So and this one, here, what this says, let me just explain what it's saying in here. What this is saying is that they're agreeing that if they purchase a property, so they acquire interest in any property, that we're gonna get paid a 3% commission plus a $295 administration fee. Then it goes on to say, though, if the BAC that's on the listing, it will go towards that. But in the event it doesn't cover the 3%, they'll pay us the difference. Make sense?
Is it, you know, in looking at a 2.5% or whatever, can I, in the offer that we write up, can I put an addendum that says, you know, and explain this to the agent, rather than offer 300, we're gonna offer 303 and increase BAC to 3%.
Okay, so
We're kind of building in.
good question. The answer is yes and no. Okay, so but let me explain. So again, in our code of ethics, it says you cannot use an offer as a way to negotiate commission. And here's why. Let me do it this way. You've got the buyer here. The buyer then is connected to the agent, the buyer's agent down here, with the agency agreement, right? That's what connects us together, or yeah, us with the buyer, right? You've got your seller over here connected with the seller's agent with agency as well, okay? Then the seller and the buyer are connected together through the reps, right? What connects these two? What connects us with the
coded
Good. MLS? We just, as part of being on the MLS is our agreement to share commission based on what it says. So the challenge is, though, is up here, if you throw commissions in here, it's actually an ethics violation to do that. Now, I actually was at a training meeting just a few months ago where the attorney for the board was there and brought up, though, and I still would not recommend doing it this way, even though he says you can. The agent can't say, let's use the offer as a way to get more commission out of these guys here. But the buyer actually could, in their offer, say to the seller, we need, as part of this offer, the commission to be paid, the other 0.5% paid here. So to me, I'm still not, the reason I say I wouldn't do that, because to me, I don't see the difference.
Yeah, I don't see a difference.
And so I didn't get a chance to get it clarified, but what he said is, it's okay for the buyer to ask the seller to pay. Oh, you know what, that's what it is. Okay, I get it. It's okay for the buyer to say, essentially, we need you to pay 3.5% towards our closing costs, 3% towards the loan amount, and 3% towards our agent's commission. Does that make sense? Because it would be okay to say, we need you to pay 3.5%, 3 is gonna go to our closing costs, and the other 0.5% is gonna go over here to our agent. So that's okay, but it's not okay to make the offer like
We're gonna increase.
contingent upon buyer's agent commission being 3%. That would be using it as a way to negotiate. So here's why, think about it. I mean, imagine you are the listing agent and you get a REPC in where it says, basically, we'll do the deal, we'll pay you your price, we'll do all of that, but the listing agent has to pay 3% to you when they're only offering 2.5%. I mean, you're the listing agent now. You go sit down with Pete as your seller, and you go, "Hey, got a great offer here, but they're asking me to give up my commission to them." And what's Pete gonna say? Well, I don't care. Go for it. You know what I mean? Get my deal done. So the problem is it puts you in a very bad position. Is why it's an ethics violation. So I know it's kind of screwy. So, but you could say. And I think that's probably how I would say you would want to word it, is 3% towards closing costs, or just even if you weren't asking closing costs, seller to pay 0.5% towards buyer agent's commission on behalf of the buyer. Because they're offering 2.5 here, but our agreement says 3 here.
So you're essentially getting 2.5% from the
From
MLS and the
and
other
0.5%
half from a credit at closing from the seller.
Yes.
Okay.
So if they don't agree to that, and let's say the seller has to come, or the buyer has to come with that other 0.5%, do they add that into their closing costs, or do they come out of their pocket?
So good question. Technically, I wish our lenders were still here, but in my opinion, it could go either way, is what I would say. To me, I think you could. There's an argument though that's saying, well, that's not closing costs, it's commission.
Regardless of this, you just take the 2.5% commission.
So that the other option would be, and is you could just decide, you know what, I'll just take the 2.5 and be happy. Here's what I do though in that scenario. If I do that, is I tell the client, I would say, hey Annika, I would say, you know what, our agreement says 3% on here, but on the MLS they were only offering 2.5%. So technically, you would owe me another 0.5%, but I'm not going to do that to you. Instead, what I hope is that you will refer people to me and be willing to help me make up that difference by referring your friends, neighbors, things like that. Does that work? And of course they're going to say yes, great. Well, for
Do
me.
you need to have a broker sign off on that?
If it's on the MLS as 2.5%, no.
No, but then that agreement still is fine and we don't have to do
Yeah.
anything.
But I would say though, in this environment, or not even in our environment, just I would say as kind of a general rule, I would go to the agent and say, hey, I've got a buyer who's very interested in this property, but I've got an agreement signed that says they're going to owe me 3%, and I'm going to collect the 3%. I play poker. You don't have to actually do it, but you could tell the listing agent, look, you're only offering 2.5, so which I'm going to then require them to pay the other half, and they can't afford to do that. So do you have any solutions of how we could make it work? And then at that point, you could say, we can either send over a commission agreement, so if we're going to change the 2.5, we got to send a commission agreement, which a broker would then have to sign on this. We could do that, or you could even say the other option is we could just ask your seller then, like I was just saying, to pay the other 0.5% of my commission for them. So they're going to pay a 5.5 or whatever your commission is, and or a 5, but then to you and then to me they'll pay another 0.5.
So they just negotiated that in their listing, just to make it so that they pay a little bit less, but they're not making less.
Sometimes I've seen actually where people will offer 2.5, and you just assume, oh, they must have done a 5% listing. You get to closing and they're getting 3, and you're getting 2.5. Yeah, so I'd rather go the other way. Keep 4, offer 3. Anyway, all right. So that's what this is saying, okay? And it's due and payable at the time of closing or signing the lease, or if they're doing the lease option, the option money, okay? Okay, now we can get to Andy. So protection period. If within blank, what should we put in there?
Isn't it usually 2 months, 60 days?
I've seen it vary from 2 months to 6 months. A lot of companies, when you see if another company, it automatically says 6 months. But the other one said 1?
I've seen a lot of people.
1. So yeah, whatever you want. I mean, for me, here's this clause. For me, it's just to keep honest people honest. Is how I look at this clause. Is the whole point of this one, because look, if I've got a buyer, so let's say Bill has signed this with me and it expires, This protection is just saying if within 1 month or 3 months or whatever, 6 months after this expires, he goes out and buys a property that I had shown him, I would still be owed the commission. Well, if I let this expire and I'm like, good riddance, how am I ever going to know what property he bought? I mean, unless it's like in my neighborhood and I see him moving in. But so to me, it's kind of a little bit irrelevant. Other than I feel like it's to keep honest people honest, because it keeps somebody from going and telling a for sale by owner, for instance, hey, as soon as this contract expires, you know, if we wait a month. So that's why for me, I think I would do at least 3 months. Is I at least want them to feel like they'd have to wait 3 months before going and buying from this for sale by owner or something. Now, the difference though, which goes to the question Andy asked, what happens though if this expires? Let's say I put 6 months in there. It expires. The person then goes and signs with Bill, and they go buy a house that I had shown them. Am I going to be owed a commission? So I would agree that I'm not going to be getting a commission for 2 reasons. One, this has expired, and then now they've gone. Even if I tried to, I went to arbitration and said I showed them that house, it's going to be that procuring cause of, well, in my mind, if I'm sitting on that hearing panel, my question would be, well, why didn't you get the deal done if you showed the house to him? And he did get the deal done. So something happened along the way. So I would say 3 months at least for me. Okay. 4, buyer representation and disclosure. So now on this one, here's the very key thing, and here's what I like about it. Is remember we're talking about we're back to that whole can of worms I opened in the beginning of agency and all that. Here's what this says. I'm going to just read the very first sentence to you. The buyer warrants that the buyer has not entered into any other exclusive buyer-broker agreement with any other brokerage that is still in force and effect. Then the next piece of this. So this is important, I think, to point out to your buyers. The buyer will, in all communications with other real estate agents, notify the agent in advance that the buyer has entered into an exclusive buyer-broker agreement with the company. So stop and think for a minute. If somebody has signed one of these, every buyer agency contract I've seen says this. So other companies too. Says exactly that. So what that means is when somebody walks into my open house, if Gabriel walks into that, he has a responsibility to walk in and say to me, I have signed agency with Natalie Johnson, and I just wanted to let you know that she's my agent. If he walked in saying that, I'd be like, oh, great, awesome. Let me get her information so I can follow up with her to let her know you stopped by. That's what I would do. Then I'd walk through the place with him, okay? And then I'd call up Natalie and say, hey, FYI, Natalie, just wanted to let you know you got a rogue buyer. They're out all wandering around on their own.
Rogue buyer.
Yeah.
That's not good.
I know.
I've noticed that a lot of buyers, they find a lot of them do their own work. They're
Yep.
finding their own properties that they want to go see, they're going, and even if you have agency with them.
Yep.
How do you want to mitigate that, or just let them do their thing?
So here's the thing. Here's the key. When you're having them sign this, point out that section of the contract. And anytime you talk to an agent, you need to let them know you've signed this with me. I'm less concerned. I even think give them a stack of business cards and say, if you're out and you walk into a model home, don't give them your information, hand them my card and just say, this is my agent. If you have any questions, call it. Don't give them your contact information, anything. This is my agent. Anybody you talk to, don't give, because if you give them your information, they're going to bug you. So just say, here's my agent's card. If you have any questions, contact Andy.
That's crazy. I like that.
Okay? So make sure you train your clients. Now, here's the other thing. Let me go back to, remember the story I told you about the agent who had signed agency, but we gave Dallin the commission? She did even bring in a copy of the signed agency. Now, was very convoluted, this whole thing, but they had done it through DocuSign. So I think this is important, especially even with .loop for us. Make sure when you're having somebody sign this through .loop that they know what they're signing. Because what happened is these people had written an offer and signed agency through DocuSign, but they said, well, we didn't realize, she didn't tell us we were signing agency, we just thought we were making an offer. So it's not a bad idea to have like a note or something, a text that you can say, here are the documents that I'm sending to you and here's what they mean, and something so that if they come back later saying, well, I just on .loop, because you know as well as I do, when they're going through and signing on there, what are they doing? Click, 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 click. They're not looking at it. They just click, 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 click. So I think it's a good idea to have something that, hey, I told them in this email, here's the documents I'm gonna be sending to you, this is what you're signing, and, something that you could have, because otherwise, for us, I mean, when they said that to us, the people said, they had written in a letter, they didn't show up, they wrote in a letter saying, we didn't know that we had signed agency. I was like, I get it, I've done that, click, 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 I wouldn't know what they threw in there, you're gonna bring me lunch every day, something like that, so. Alright, so, any questions on the representation and disclosure, that section? Okay, next, agency relationships. So this is where, what I explained to them on this is, look, there are 3 types of agents, basically. There's buyer's agent, limited agent, and seller's agent. I'm going to be representing you as a buyer's agent unless we happen to go look at one of my own listings, then I would be a limited agent. But explain to them what it means, the fiduciary duties, and how you're going to help and represent them. Which also means what? When you're talking to another agent, don't share with them information. Again, just point them back to me. Hand them my card and say, call. Because if you run into a listing agent and go look at the property, they're representing the seller, and if you tell them stuff, they then will have to tell their seller.
So this listing that I just had to put under contract, I want to know if she did it right or wrong. So when I talked to her, she sent me an offer, called me on the phone, explained the offer of why they did what they did. But she also said, we were talking about the refrigerator being thrown in. And she said, well, my client realizes that they're going to probably want to get more money if they're going to throw the refrigerator counter back. And they're okay to accept that.
Probably.
So she told me that we could do a full offer, throw the fridge in, and they're going to accept it, and they did.
Yeah.
Is that okay for her?
If her client told her, only if the client told her, it's okay to tell them. But if you're,
why make the offer in the first?
Yeah, then just do the upgrade. So
I'm just
probably not, but
Was it a full price offer?
We countered at full price, and they came back and they signed full price, but they didn't offer full price.
yeah.
But they might have just been using it as a bargaining chip.
The fridge was like 1%. Yeah, the fridge was it cost them like $2,500.
Yeah. Well, whatever. Okay, good. So on this page, then obviously they're going to initial. Any other questions on that? Oh, the only one thing let me do say on limited agency. Limited agency on that, just make sure when you're writing an offer on a Century 21 Everest listing that you use limited agency and send that over with the offer. Fill that out. Did you not?
No, I didn't think about that.
So yeah, make sure, because even though you may still be representing your buyer only and the listing agent's representing the seller only, the brokerage still, we need that limited agency consent. Now if it's your own listing, then it's only you. Go ahead. Is that what you were going to say?
No, like in a situation where you don't have signed agency with either a buyer or a seller, but they're maybe going to negotiate something through you, is it okay to, I try to be careful about like what I would disclose, but to try to get them on the same page before you sign agency so you don't have any specific duty to either of them, and then, does that make sense? So like the decisions are kind of made ahead
Isn't
of
it
time.
implied agency at that point?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what they would probably come back as saying, well, yeah, I hadn't signed anything, but I had told her I wanted to be. I think, yeah, I wouldn't play that.
In the situation I'm talking about, I was asking questions, not necessarily like things to think about, not necessarily like, this is what they would do, and this is what they would do, but like, these are things to think about in any situation where you would.
Yeah, as long as it's just general, yes. Yeah, just keeping it general, I think that's fine. All right, next page, 6, professional advice. Now, here's what I do on this section. As soon as I get to section 6 where it's talking about professional advice, this is saying that you're trained in the marketing of real estate and basically not to rely on you and trust you for anything that's outside of the scope of real estate. So for me, as soon as I get to this section is when I would then start to talk about the next document back, which is the due diligence. So as soon as I get to professional advice, I just tell them, look, I'm trained in the marketing of real estate, and we've got a whole, this is so important, we've got a whole separate document called buyer due diligence that I'm going to have you sign as part of this. Which actually, let me even go back on that. Got to find it real quick. So turn back actually to 4, because this is really important actually. So probably, I really probably should start doing this in section 4 instead of waiting until section 6, because here's why. Notice in section 4, the very last piece where it has F down at the second to last line, I think it is. well, I guess third if you count the one word, but it says F. No, sorry. E, it's E, go up to E. On E it says, upon signing of this exclusive buyer-broker agreement, personally review and sign the buyer due diligence checklist form. So one of the things they're acknowledging as they do this is that they have also done due diligence. So really, once you get to section 4 would probably be the time to then go back to due diligence and say, let me explain due diligence to you, and go through that form. Essentially, the due diligence form, buyer due diligence, you want to do that. I mean, you want to get that one signed. That is like your get out of jail free card. If a client comes back saying, hey, you told me the property line, the fence was on my property, or it wasn't, or whatever. I mean, that buyer due diligence is where you're telling them. And what I usually will do it, like I turn it into kind of more of a joking kind of a thing with due diligence, meaning that I say to them, look, what this due diligence form says is don't trust anything I tell you. And then they usually will be like, what? And I say, essentially what it's saying is, look, I don't know everything there is to know about building and zoning codes. I don't know everything about the hazardous waste and toxic substances. I don't know about surveying and staking. I don't know about the home warranty plans, everything there is to know, and flood zones, and homeowners insurance, and title insurance, and affordable housing, and all of those things. So if you've got specific questions, if I answer you on any of those things, what this form is saying, don't rely on me. Talk to a professional, not me. Okay? And then now, when I'm out at the house, so I usually do it that way. Now I'm out at the house and they say, hey, do you think this sound system is working, or that it's a good thing, or they say, do you think this electrical box, blah, 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 or do you think that the fence is on the property line? Then how I handle it when they ask that type of a question that's one of these, I would say, well, it looks like it probably is to me. However, remember that due diligence form that you signed that says don't trust anything I tell you on that? If that really is a concern, you probably should talk to a surveyor to find out for sure is it on the property line. Because it looks like it, but I'm not the expert. I mean, I just always tie it back to, hey, it looks to me like it probably is, but I'm not the expert, so if it's a concern, go check it out. And then what do you think they say? Well, what would you do? The answer is, well, if it's a concern, you should get it checked out. Because, I mean, for me personally, I probably wouldn't care, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't check it out. So that's your get out of jail free, okay? So that if somebody ever tried to come back on you, that's the document as a company we're going to use to say, well, you shouldn't rely on us, and you signed a document agreeing you wouldn't. So, okay? All right, so let's go back now. So section 6 essentially is saying that same thing. It's just that then the due diligence is a expansion on it, okay? Dispute resolution in 7 is basically just saying in the event there is a dispute over this contract, meaning between us and the buyer, we will first go to mediation before going to court, okay? And then 8 says in the event we end up in court, the prevailing party is entitled to reasonable attorney's fees, stuff like that. Buyer's authorizations in 9 says that they're authorizing us to disclose after closing to each MLS in which we participate what the final terms of the sales price were. Why do we need that? Yeah, but I mean, why do we need the buyer to agree to it?
Because it's a non-disclosure.
Because we're in a non-disclosure state, so we couldn't do it without their permission. So we're getting permission to disclose, okay? The other thing it talks about in here is in terms of earnest money, it's saying it may be placed in an interest-bearing account, and if we do, that money then goes to UARHOF, the Utah Association of Realtors Housing Opportunity Fund, okay? 10 is the additional attachments, so there either are or are not. If there are, check the R box and get an addendum and then fill it out to this. If there's not, just do R not.
What would you attach to this?
So there's not a lot that really you would. I mean, like, potentially, maybe let's say that a buyer came in and they signed this, but they said, we've looked at one for sale by owner, and if we buy that one, we wouldn't want to have to pay you a commission on it. Then you'd go, okay, so let's do R, and then put on there, this contract does not
With
apply if they
exception.
purchase, and blah, blah, yeah, something.
Okay.
So pretty rare that you can do that with a buyer, but that would be one. 11, equal housing opportunity. Again, just saying you're going to follow all the free fair housing laws. 12 is electronic transmission counterparts. We're agreeing it's okay to fax or email. I actually got a fax the other day. That was kind of funny. I'm like, wow, it's been a long time since I had that. But anyway, 13 is due on sale clause. Here's the importance of this due on sale clause. Really, it only applies, your buyer would only be concerned if they're doing a lease option or a seller financing. Because basically what it's saying is certain transactions could trigger that. Meaning if you're doing a lease option, it's possible that could trigger the due on sale clause in which the mortgage company could come and foreclose basically on the seller. And if you're the buyer, you'd now have to come up with the money to pay that off to keep the house. Okay? So, and really, again, only lease option or seller financing. If it's just a typical purchase, you can just say, really, it's not going to apply. It's not going to make a difference. Okay? All right, 14, kind of cruising through. This one, this is a new section we added since October. The purpose of this section. Now, so this is what's kind of funny with this one, is so the division of real estate says one of your responsibilities as an agent is you are supposed to review the settlement statements, which is now the closing disclosure, but the settlement statements on behalf of your buyer at every closing. So the state is telling you legally you have to do that. Well then in October, the CFPB came out and basically now, which is overseeing kind of everything, CFPB has come out now and said, you're not entitled to see those closing disclosures. So you got a federal law saying you can't see them and a state law saying that that's part of your job, you got to go see them. So the way we get around all that is here in section 14. We're having the buyer give permission. So with permission, it's okay for us to see them. So the buyer is just giving us permission right here to be able to see those closing disclosures. So if the title company is not wanting to give it to you or the mortgage company, give them a copy of our agreement here showing they've agreed. That's what this is saying. That's what this authorized to furnish TILA/RESPA integrated disclosures. So that gives us permission to see it, which we want to because we want to make sure the commission's right. We want to make sure the homework, all the stuff the state wanted you to do anyway, make sure that the settlement statements, closing disclosures has all the stuff from the contract that your client's being protected out. Go ahead.
I really love the new settlement statements.
Do you?
They're so easy to read. And
Good.
they're not complicated to have to
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. The main thing is just make sure that if there's a home warranty, if there's closing costs, the commissions, all those things are on there, correct? Okay? And then 15 says this is the entire agreement. So saying that if anything's not in writing, then we're not doing it. So another thing I guess that could potentially be on an addendum would be, let's say that I had advertised, buy with me and I'll pay for a home warranty for you for the first year or something. If I did that, that would be something else to put on an addendum as well. Because this is saying if it's not on an addendum or anything, we don't have to do it. So advertise it and then don't put it here. I'm just
You would still need to do escrow instructions in that specific example, right? You just
Correct.
take care of the FC, you still need to cover that home warranty on the FC.
Yes, correct, yes. All right, and then so you're going to have them sign, and then you, at the end of this class, are authorized to sign. All right, you guys don't like which ones. You're ready. But you are authorized to sign. You can sign it. All right, next, so due diligence we've already covered, but you're going to fill that out. Make sure that, which now that's interesting. I wonder where. Here's what's funny is we were talking about that section 4 where it says they have to sign it at the time, and I brought up, I said, but the form has a spot for the address, the property address, it's property specific, and in our meeting, Rob Oakey said no it doesn't, and pulled it up and showed me it doesn't, but it's right here, and I got this. So obviously I need to update in .loop because I need to update this one, I think.
So this is the old one?
I think so because the one that's currently in .loop does not have a property attached to it. So, yeah, on the due diligence checklist. So, I was like, no, I swear it had property, and then I could never find it again, and here it is.
So you only need this once if you don't have a property.
If there's no property address on it, you only use it once, which makes sense because in section 4 it's saying we're having them sign it. So, prior to that, though, prior to us having that conversation, I always said you got to do it for every property.
Yeah, like if you're in both blocks.
Oh, so if you're showing other homes, then, okay, I got it.
Okay. So good. Any other questions on the due diligence? Okay, go over to the next form, which is the receipt of acknowledgement of due diligence by the buyer. So this receipt of acknowledgement is, this one is just a Century 21 form. So we've actually taken the due diligence and stepped it up a little. Because we've had people or heard of people saying, oh, I didn't know what I was signing. We now created our own to have them acknowledge and have them, they are gonna initial next to every one of these things basically saying, I understand my right to have a home inspection, I understand the home warranty, mold, gas, radon, all those things in terms of they're initially next to it, so it's even stronger for us to be able to say, not only do we tell you on the due diligence, we had you then initial next to here saying, yes, you did acknowledge. So that one's another requirement. All right, next page is the confirmation of earnest money. So when do we use this one?
When we bring it into the brokerage.
Good. So if on the rep C you check the box that says they're delivering it with the offer and you sign it there, you don't need this. If you check the box saying you'll get it 4 days after, then this is what we sign. Okay? Any questions on that? So on that, you'll just put in buyer, buyer agent, all that, and then sign for whoever received it. And then you can send that to the listing agent saying, here's the confirmation that we did receive earnest money. Question?
On this next thing, I'll wait.
Okay. Next then. Limited agency. You want to wait on that too? Okay. So limited agency consent, we talked a little bit about it. So on this, again, you're going to use this form anytime both the buyer's agent and listing agent are with Century 21 Everest. So for instance, up north though, there's a Century 21, whatever, gauge for whatever, I can't remember what it's even called, but there's a Century 21. If you were dealing with a listing with them, we would not use this. What's that? Because it's not the same brokerage, yeah. And ultimately, anytime both agents have the same principal broker, then we would use this. Make sense? Okay.
So for this with George Morris, but Centerville has.
But George is still the principal.
He's still the principal, but like on the listing, it says listing broker for Centerville is different.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, and we base this off principal broker.
Gotcha.
So yeah, the best way to look good is if you're writing the offer, if the listing agent, if the brokerage is Century 21 Everest, you need this.
Okay.
If it's Century 21 XYZ, you don't. Is that what you were going to ask? Carrie?
No.
Keep going? Okay. All right. So on here, so if there are two agents, you're going to put you put the name of the buyer, name of the seller, the agent representing the buyer, agent representing the seller. Could be if it's you or both, you're going to put your name on both. Name of the brokerage, Century 21 Everest property. What?
If you are both, you have permission?
Yes.
I figured you
And that's, but essentially that's,
talk to them first before you.
yeah. And then this is just our proof, basically, that they gave permission. So yeah, good question. Then you're going to put the property address in there. This then just goes through and explains again more on agency of just explaining and the difference is you just couldn't tell them the highest the buyer's willing to pay. You couldn't tell the buyer the lowest the seller's willing to take. So.
We talked about it in the general term in here, so, if you're doing this, then you want to have this. If they come into an open house that you're doing and you want to do that, you would have them sign this, but you would actually need to.
Yep, you would just have to.
You can do that and then it's okay with yourself.
Yeah, and so first I would be okay with the seller at the time of listing. So we usually do that at the time of listing. Then when the buyer comes in, as we're having them sign the buyer agency is when I would explain it to them and then throw this.
Do you ever have the other way around, since now we're like door knocking and saying, we're gonna sell your house, because I already
Oh,
live here?
yeah, great question. Yeah, you could. That's exactly what we do.
Whoever you're working with first, just ask them if they're.
Yep. Yeah, and especially, but if you were out door knocking for the buyer, you would be saying to the buyer, so ultimately what you'd want to tell the buyer is, I'm going to go out and door knock to try to find you one. If I do, are you okay if I end up representing both sides? And they'll go, well, yeah, why wouldn't I?
Because I'll say no.
Unless they're an
If you
attorney.
say no, I'll say no.
If they're an attorney, they'll say no.
Doors to ask somebody to sell a house.
Which is funny, and actually, if you think about it, I had an attorney one time say, this is the stupidest thing ever that you guys do, this limited agency. He's like, it would be like me going to court and saying, okay, Your Honor, I'm going to represent both the plaintiff and the defendant at the same time. So stand up and try to tell a jury why he's guilty and why he's not. Which I guess I'd never thought of it that way, but in essence, that's kind of what we're doing. Is we're in court representing both parties.
But you're just a mediator then. You have to explain
Exactly.
to them that your role is changing to a mediator. So instead of representing both to defend them, you're.
And how I usually explain it is, so look, in a limited agency situation, if I know the lease the seller's going to take, I can't tell you. But if we're not, like let's say Gabriel was representing the seller and I'm representing the buyer, can't tell you the lowest they're gonna take because I don't know anyway. So even though I might know, I just can't tell you. But if you don't wanna do that and you want Bill to represent you and I'll represent the seller, you're still not gonna know. So it's not like it gets you really any advantage, so.
Well, and in the end, everything is the choice of the buyer or the seller. You're not gonna say, you should, all
Yeah.
of this, I mean, you're never gonna say that anyway,
Right.
because then you get blamed if
Yeah.
the person doesn't.
Here's the other thing I've found is, for me, those limited agency, when I'm representing both sides, those are like the most pleasant, because the other agent on the other side is so easy to deal with.
Yeah.
Seems a lot like,
Always returns phone calls.
Yeah, always returns my calls, yeah.
Always answers my
Keeps
calls.
me up at night
helping somebody
sometimes.
find a vehicle,
So what's that?
because I'm negotiating with
yeah.
vehicles.
Yeah,
You know, it was interesting when we sold our home in Australia, our seller was our seller was the buyer for the person that bought our house. And she already knew what the limit was, but she sort of made sure that the buyer wasn't going to down that
Yeah.
limit. So it was really great
Yeah,
that she
can be- yeah,
represented
exactly.
us.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, good. We got plenty of time. All right, next form then is lead-based paint. Okay, so on lead-based paint, when do we use this form? Prior to 78. So if it's 1978, do we need it?
No,
Okay, good. We do not need it if it's
how about
1978.
remodeled and everything?
It doesn't matter if they've even remodeled. If it's built prior to 78, and I'm talking the year built, not the effective year built, okay? On the year built, if it's prior to 1978, we need this. Now, here's the thing though, and this is really crucial, so make sure you're paying attention on this. I see a lot of times where somebody will fill out the offer on the REPC, and then they will check the box on the REPC in section 9 that says lead-based paint disclosure and acknowledgement form, and then the agent puts in the lead-based paint addendum. There's a difference. Lead-based paint disclosure is this one. This is the one that's required. So what's the addendum?
It's the seller telling the knowledge of that or not.
Well, no, that's the disclosure is them telling us either there is lead-based paint or there's not. But what's the addendum? So the addendum is only used, look down here on this form, look down in section 3D, and you've got 1 and 2. In 3D1, it says a 10-day opportunity or a mutually agreed upon period to conduct a risk assessment or inspection for the presence of lead paint and or lead-based paint hazards. If this box is initialed, the REPC must include the lead-based paint addendum.
Basically, so you whether it had it.
So the only time we're going to use the addendum basically is just saying, okay, we're going to test for lead-based paint, and here's what happens if we find it, and what if we don't, da da da.
So it's the result of whatever you.
Yeah, kind of is more dealing with that. But so if your buyer initials 3D1, we need the addendum as well as this. If they initial 3D2, saying by initialing they've waived their opportunity to conduct a risk inspection, we don't need the addendum at all.
This comes from the seller side.
So yeah, great. So should. That's the problem is it doesn't always. So let's talk. We're doing buyer packet today, but we'll talk seller too. So when you list a property, have your seller fill this out. Have them initial everything up here in section 2. You then, as the listing agent, should initial 4. Now, as the listing agent, not the buyer's agent, listing agent, you would initial 4, and then everybody signs it. Then when you've got a list of property that is prior to 1978, fill this out, get it all done, upload it to the MLS, because here's the crazy thing. The way that the law is written is the seller has to disclose to the buyer prior to writing an offer. So this form should be done prior to writing an offer. The challenge is, and thankfully now we can upload to the MLS, but prior to being able to do that, what would happen is people would write an offer, they would send this form over, the buyer would send it to the seller, which is kind of crazy because it's supposed to come from the seller, but they would send it over, they would then do it, or they would not even do it till after. So I was talking to UAR's attorney one day, and I said, nobody ever does this the way the law is written, because the law says the seller should disclose first to the buyer. He said, as long as it's signed prior to them closing, it doesn't matter. Which I think that's fine. I mean, it's not like you need to go undo a transaction if you didn't do it first. But at least for us, let's us do it the right way. So when we list a property, let's fill this out. Let's get it uploaded to the MLS. Now, when you are writing an offer then, if there is one already uploaded to the MLS, have you guys seen on there when there's an attachment, it's got the light green box thing? Download this and then sit down with your buyer. Here's the other thing that I think gets missed a lot too, that doesn't happen, probably is the way I should say it. In section 3A, so since we're talking buyer here, 3A says, oh no, 3B is the one I want. The 3A says they've gotten any of the information, so make sure if there is any, you've gotten it, which most of the time you won't. 3B though says buyer has received the pamphlet, Protect Your Family from Lead in Your Home. So you need to make sure when you're writing an offer on a property built prior to 78, you give them that pamphlet, because they're initially they got it. And there is a PDF that I would recommend giving them the PDF version, because it's, if you printed it, it's thick. So, but they're initially that they've received it. Make sure they receive it, because I could see that being something that somebody uses as a way to get out of a contract is, you know, I initialed it, but I never got it. Of course, that should be the why you initial it.
Can you send that through Outlook?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, so it's, that form is in Dotloop?
Yes. So I just share it with, which I think that's a great way to do it, because then you've got proof.
Yeah.
Not only do we have an initial that we gave it to them, you can see in Dotloop we share it with them.
So can't I just send the addendum in advance of my buyer's signature?
Well, wait a minute. The addendum or the disclosure? Why would you do that?
Saying you want your 10 days to inspect it, and you don't know about it. Doesn't that just cover it?
No. This, you got to do this one.
Well, I know you have to do this at some point as the UAR.
Oh, okay. You're just meaning like
I'm
just
saying I'm gonna
as
take
a
the liberty of
standard.
letting them know in front, right? For instance, with this market,
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
doing
that'd be
7 day
okay.
due diligence, so I just send
Okay.
this other piece over in advance.
Yeah, that'd be okay.
For 7 or 10 days,
That would be okay. Yeah, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
but then you still use it.
But yeah, you always need this. More of my concern, what I was getting at, and maybe I didn't finish it, was agents will fill out the REPSI and do the addendum, but not have this.
Okay.
That's more what I was getting at. Is yeah, it's if you, this one is the one that's required. The addendum is only if you're going to text. Okay. All right. Let's see what else. Just basically everybody's got to sign that. Okay. All right. Last page. Last page on this is your the commission report. Went blank on what it was called. The commission report. So once you get a property under contract, then you need to fill out a commission report. Now I've got a video that I've created that you can go through to watch that shows. And actually, I should say I created it. Ryan, the accountant, did. I just oversaw him create the video, but he created a video of how to fill this out. And we've actually got 3 different videos on it. One is so if you're on a team, how you would fill it out. If you're just a single agent doing it, how you're filling it out. And I think the other one was if there are just 2 agents. So if you decided to, you know, team up with, like let's say Pete and Gabriel went door knocking. I pointed at Dan. Gabriel went door knocking and decided, hey, let's both do this deal together and we'll just split it. So we've got a video of how to fill this out. But essentially, this is how you're going to get paid. You got to fill out this commission report. So you just, and it's very simple to do. I mean, just basically go through and answer the questions. So you're going to put in there the property address, the buyer, the seller, the title company, and then where it says transaction type, that is, if you click on it, it'll bring up and there's different choices. We've got it defaulted to residential / buying, but if it was like a commercial or something, you can change it. Then you're going to go on to the commissions to Everest. So the selling price, you're just going to put it in. Is it based on gross or net? And you know that how?
Based on that.
Looking on the MLS if it says gross or net. So you'll just put whatever it has on there. The commission percentage, again, just off the MLS, is it 3? What is it? Commission to an outside referral company. If you're paying a referral to somebody, an outside of the company referral, you know, meaning like, let's say you had a friend in St. George that said, hey, I got a buyer for you. The friend in St. George is with ABC Realty down there, then you would check that box and change it from none to that there is, and then it'll open up another box where you can type in all their information. Okay? Then commission advance company used, that's not going to happen. Century 21 admin fee collected. So if you're charging the $295, put that in there. If you didn't, if you're not charging it and you're going to pay it, then you'd change that to 0, and then it just comes out of you. This way, it tells our accounting department to look for that coming from the title company. Make sense? Earnest money held by us. So again, if we're holding the earnest money, how much was it? Agents credits given at title. So if you for some reason to put the deal together, called one of the brokers and said, hey, in order to get this deal together, we're gonna have to kick in $200 or whatever. If you did something like that, that's where you would put that in there. So you put $200 credit given at closing. So then that'll total up and tell you here's how much the title check should be and how much the commission to Everest would be. Okay? And the reason those two would be different is if we're holding the earnest money already, if we already have it, the title company sends us $1,000 less or however much the earnest money is. Make sense? So that's why the title check could be $8,295, but then our commission would be $9,000 because we're already holding $1,000. Okay? Then down here, how the commissions are split. Again, this one's showing here as a single agent because that's most of the time what it'll be. But you can click that and it'll tell you the different options on there. The agent name is where you're going to put in your name. Then it's got the admin fee, have the collected portion there. It's the agent's base. Then your split is you'll put in there whatever your split is, and meaning, so like what it's showing here. If you were on a 70-30 split, how much is Everest getting? That would be the 30%. Okay, so you put that in there. Then it breaks down, shows the franchise fee, the admin fee to pay, and then if you wanted to donate anything to the foundation. I think it defaults, it has 21 in there. You could do more or less, whatever you want to do, change it. Transaction coordinator fee, if you're using the transaction coordinator, you just put the $295 in there, and then who the name of the transaction coordinator is, and then tells you what your check will be, and if you want direct deposit or not. And that's, again,
Your transaction coordinator do this?
That's what I was just going to say. The beautiful thing is, if you're using transaction coordination, they do all this for you. You don't have to worry about it.
And the first time you use it's half price.
Yeah, the first time you use them, it's half price. And
This bottom section, the commission to agent, that's already programmed in, right? Because Andrew already does that part, like our splits and all that kind of stuff.
no, you'll put it in. So, which brings up a great question. Well, what if you just put in 0? They check it.
If you're on a team.
If you're on a team, though, you're going to click the single agent where it says single agent. You'll click that, and it'll say team, and then it brings up another box that you can put in what the team is and all that. And sometimes on the teams, they even have their own transaction coordinator, and they'll do this. So you wouldn't worry about it. All right, 8 minutes to spare, almost. So he brought in something here, so I guess if you want one of these from Steve. But before that,
That's from manufacturing.
so here's what I wanted to talk real quick though about. So next Thursday is business planning is what we're going to be doing. So those of you that still need that, I have an assignment for you prior to the class. If you really want to have like the class to be really good for you and effective, here's what you need to do. So, which any of you that have been to it, if you want to leave at this point, go ahead and go. If you've already been through business planning, if you want to stay, you're welcome to do it. But for the business planning, here's what I want you to do: is I want you to come to the business planning class with some homework done. So, what would you call it if you got a prerequisite, I guess. But you can come even if you don't do it. But here's kind of your prerequisite. What I want you to do between now and then, I want you to calculate and figure out, because as we do business planning, the problem is when we do business planning, there are so many times that what happens is that an agent will say, when we're doing the planning, like how much money do you want to make this next year? They'll just say $100,000. If you put $100,000, then it's not probably going to work very well. I'm not saying you won't get there, it might work, but what I'm going to have you do will make it way more effective for you, okay? So what I want you to do is the first thing is calculate out all of your just bills, like on a monthly basis, so maybe that's how I have to word it, is monthly outgoing. I want you to figure out, like, how much on a monthly basis do you need just to survive? How much money do you need just every month to pay the bills, to do whatever it is? So sit down and kind of calculate that out. Figure out how much do you absolutely have to have every single month, okay? Once you have that number, then that's going to give us a start. Then I want you from there to say, okay, what do I want to do next year? And when I say what do I want to do, like what trips do you want to go on? And figure out, like, let's say that I said, I want to go down to Cancun, I want to take my family, I want to do an all-inclusive resort, and we're going to do that next year. Okay, great. So how much is the airfare going to be? How much is the hotel going to be? Or do you still need to get a passport? What excursions are you gonna wanna go on? I mean, figure out exactly how much that's gonna be, so under like trips that you wanna take. So calculate out exactly how much is it gonna cost to go do that trip. And what hotels do you wanna stay at? Do you wanna stay in a nicer one or not? Whatever, figure out exactly how much it's gonna cost. Then figure out, okay, what else am I wanting to do? Do you have like a credit card you wanna pay off or something? If you do, then you're saying, hey, this next year I wanna pay off this credit card and it's X amount of dollars, then I'm gonna add that in. And do I wanna buy a new car next year? I mean, you kinda get my point, right? As far as like, get like detailed down into like, how much money do I need to make next year if I wanna do this trip, I wanna do this, what trainings do you wanna go to? You know, are there some Mike Ferry events or a Tony Robbins event or something you wanna go to? So calculate like all of that stuff out to figure out how much is that gonna be? What's the airfare? Where are you gonna stay? What kind of car you want to get? Do you want to pay off your house, or at least reduce what your principal balance is on your home by $10,000 or whatever? I mean, just figure out what it is. Then what I want you to be able to do is then once you've calculated all those things out, add that all up, and then come up with whatever that number is here. You know, that's what mine looks like. No, I'm just kidding. So calculate what that number is going to be. This is how much money I want to make. So when you're coming up with like your business plan, we want to detail it out so that, and here's what I'll tell you. It's highly unlikely this is going to end up being $100,000. It might be $125,265. You know, I mean, but that's what I want it to be. When you're so I want you to come to the class prepared as we go through the stuff with this number. So between now and then, you know, if you need to get with a significant other or whatever to calculate it out to say, okay, what are the things we want to do? What car do I want to buy and how much is it going to cost and those type of things to figure out exactly, here's how much money I'm going to make this next year. And what I'll tell you is if you do it at that detail, it'll mean more to you than just $100,000, okay? And so then what we'll do on Thursday in class is we'll then use that and I'll help you to go from there. Okay, how do we build your business plan based on you wanting to have X amount of dollars? Make sense? Okay. Thanks for being here. Have a great week. See you Tuesday and
Are we gonna be here
get
today?
some deals. Oh yeah, no, thank you. Sorry, yeah. Actually, yes. So nothing on Tuesday. Thank you for bringing that up. Monday, well, because typically it would have been Summit on Tuesday, but Summit is on Monday, and I didn't plan class. So, you know, if somebody wants, though, I'd be happy to still come and be here on Tuesday, and we can work on whatever you want to work on. So we can do that if you want to. Yeah, whatever. Doesn't matter. So anyway, but yeah, so yeah, not till Thursday. I'll see you Monday, hopefully at Summit, but then Thursday. Okay, thanks.
You mentioned an initial orientation.
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything about that.